So today we are continuing our discussion of mind and Ayurveda, and we're going to deal with a new topic, which is the Panchakosha, or the 5 layers of awareness. Now, Panchakosha is sometimes referred to as 5 sheaths, 5 layers, 5 levels. These are all correct. I like to use the term layers because, think about an onion. An onion has multiple layers, and if you slice the onion, you're slicing through those layers, and you can see the cross section. It's a little bit more complicated than that with our awareness and our existence, because we also have an interaction between these different layers as well. So let's talk about that. Now, this presentation is specifically about how these 5 layers of awareness affect eating. So the first layer is Annamaya. Now, Annamaya is the level of awareness of food and consumption. It's the most basic and the most physical. Think about when, a young child, like a baby toddler, what is it that they want to do? What is the thing that toddlers and babies always want to do? They put things in their mouth. They will open their mouth and say, "Ma!" They want to be fed. Give me something. Put something in my mouth and feed me, nourish me. Because this is the most basic thing. It's the most fundamental thing. We need physical nourishment, especially when we are small, when we are just beginning to grow. So Annamaya is the first stage. It's the first layer of our awareness. And it's something that's with us throughout our development, throughout our life. Now, if we get stuck in this level of awareness, then this becomes a problem. So the focus is on the gross nourishment. It's the need for the body to be nourished. And Annamaya also has an attraction toward the taste that's associated with gaining weight, fats, fried things, and sweets. And also simple emotions of security that we have from the time we were babies and toddlers. So, if you think about this, if you think about our development as humans and as adult humans, if we remain stuck or if we regress back to this age, if we are stuck in this age, it can lead to many types of problems. It can lead to eating disorders. It can lead to a lack of discrimination where we do not eat healthy things. We only eat for comfort. Eating comfort foods is a serious problem. It can lead to all kinds of health issues. From the perspective of Ayurveda, if we are absorbed in the Annamaya stage, then we are really limiting our consciousness, and we are limiting our involvement and experience in life. We can develop a lack of discrimination. It can also make us selfish, because if you think about small babies and toddlers, it's all about me. That's a natural thing when we're small, when we're babies. We need to be selfish. We need everyone around us needs to protect us and give us attention and nurture us. Nurture me, feed me. I need to grow. I'm a tiny little baby and I need to grow bigger so that I can defend myself and take care of myself. But when we're older, this is problematic. Annamaya also can lead to a tendency to overconsume. So if we remain too focused in this Annamaya layer of existence, that can lead to the tendency to overconsume. If we're doing comfort eating, the problem with comfort eating is not having a little bit, it's that we are trying to fill an emotional void in our life with food. And this may not be a problem that we have ourselves, but it is frequently going to be a problem that we as practitioners will try to help people with. We will, have to try to help people be able to recognize and try to help people with overcoming the, the tendency to get stuck in the Annamaya stage, the Annamaya level of awareness. And we'll do that by trying to increase awareness of the other levels of awareness, the other layers of awareness. There can also be a reinforcement of a regressed emotional state. So if we're stuck in a regressed emotional state, sometimes people are in a regressed emotional state because of trauma. Sometimes people have suffered trauma, especially if they've suffered trauma in very early childhood. That can greatly increase the tendency to be stuck in the stage of Annamaya. And then, of course, obviously, Annamaya is going to be associated with having a tendency that could lead toward obesity, diabetes, etc., and other health problems. But from that perspective, Annamaya is an important part of this. It's a healthy part. It's a normal part of our development. But we need to be able to move beyond it as well. So what is beyond Annamaya? And that is Pranamaya. Okay, what is Pranamaya? Pranamaya is the level of awareness of our vitality, our energy, and our strength. Now let's go back to our analogy. We were young children and infants, we were toddlers and infants, and we were just maybe starting to crawl, starting to walk. And it's that stage, if you've had small children in the house, the stage I'm talking about, where they put everything in their mouth. Okay, that's Annamaya. What's the Pranamaya stage? Okay, now I want to play. Okay, I need you to come and have dinner. No, I don't want to come and eat. I want to play. Our 4-year-old is like that. He wants to play. He wants to do things. He is busy. He is too busy to stop and eat. So we have to grab him sometimes and pick him up and put him in a chair and put something in his mouth because he doesn't want to stop what he's doing. He's just too busy playing. That is Pranamaya. That's the essence of the Pranamaya layer of awareness. It's the awareness of the pran, the vital force that is circulating throughout our body. And I like that feeling. I like the feeling of being alive. Now, if someone is more stuck in Annamaya and their eating habits are more Annamaya, then, the next layer of awareness is Pranamaya, and getting them to be engaged and involved in the Pranamaya stage. This would be kind of the starting point to move out of that obsession with Annamaya. So think about it. Go back again. Think about that development, early childhood, baby, infant, toddler, Annamaya. And now, young child, preschooler, Pranamaya. I want to play. I want to play. No, I don't want to come and sleep. I want to play. I don't want to come and eat. I want to play. I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to come take a bath. I want to play. And that is natural. It's natural. There's also an obsession nowadays with it. Children naturally have a lot of energy. They actually want to be active. It is a natural thing to be active. And sometimes people don't want to have to manage children's level of activity. So, hey, let's give them some drugs. Let's say that they're ADHD, and we'll put them on, something that's going to calm them down. Well, from the perspective of Ayurveda, you are really subverting something that's very natural. It's actually a made-up thing, and our perspective is that it's a made-up thing. It's made up by the drug companies. They can sell a lot of medications for children who get diagnosed as ADHD, and schools can say, well, we don't have to deal with children who are a problem because they're too active, because they don't want to just sit down and behave themselves. And to make our job easier, we're going to tell you that you're failing as a parent if you don't get this child diagnosed as ADHD and get them on some medication that's going to make them more docile and, easy to control. So from the perspective of Ayurveda, from Annamaya, it is a natural progression to Pranamaya. But Annamaya remains a part of us. We need the Annamaya layer. We also need the Pranamaya layer. This is also a very important thing. The focus in Pranamaya is on good health, vitality, energy, endurance, physical stamina, and sexual ability. These are just some examples of the things as adults, as we develop into adults. These are all the things that are sort of components of our Pranamaya layer of awareness. So there's the Annamaya layer of our awareness, of our nourishment, and the Pranamaya layer of awareness. And when people are in that absorbed more in the Pranamaya layer of awareness, they do things like they want to be active. I like to work out. I like to run. I get the runner's high. I get some release of endorphins when I'm running and doing physical activity. And if somebody gets into doing physical activity, it becomes something that you get used to. It feels good. It feels good. You feel more alive when you're active. Are there any problems if someone is stuck more in the Pranamaya layer of awareness? Not nearly so much as in Annamaya. So now we're shifting. We're not talking about development of children anymore. Now we're talking about adults. What happens when adults are only really focused on the Pranamaya layer of awareness? Then someone might be somewhat insensitive. They also might have a lack of awareness of the social and karmic impact of different things that they're doing. And it's really a focus, it's still very much a focus on the vital force within the body. Annamaya is more a focus on the gross physical body itself. Pranamaya is focusing more on the feeling of being alive, of movement, of doing. But there's more to life than that. So then what is it that comes above the Pranamaya layer of awareness? Well, there is Manomaya. So what is Manomaya? Manomaya is the layer of awareness of feelings, of varied tastes, of complex emotions. So let's go back to the childhood analogy. Now the child is maybe any age between 3 and 7, and they start discovering stories and books and imagination and, having likes and dislikes. I mean, children develop at different rates. They experience and they branch out into these different layers, really starting from earlier ages, but we're talking about, when they start to become more focused in these layers. So, it's a natural progression. The understanding the Panchakosh and understanding how we permeate through these 5 layers of awareness, it is very helpful to think about normal and healthy childhood development and how we naturally go through these things. Kind of like if you fill up a glass, that has, let's say that a glass that holds 5 ounces in it. First, you're going to reach the line where 1 ounce is filled. Then you're going to reach the line where 2 ounces is filled. Then you're going to reach the line where 3 ounces is filled, then 4, and then finally 5, and the cup is full. So we're talking, now we're up to the 3rd layer. So Manomaya is the level of awareness. So in childhood, we reached a point where now I have become aware of, living in a dream world, or at least when I was a kid, that was how it was with me. I would be in books all the time. I loved to read, And nowadays there's other things other than reading, but that's a very typical example of manomaya. Also, in the manomaya stage, we start to we start to explore our emotions and our feelings. It's a very normal thing in the manomaya stage to explore our feelings in relation to other humans, and even our pets. This is also part of our manomaya layer of awareness. It's all about our feelings. And also taste. When we talk about taste, we're not just talking about the taste of food. That's also a part of it. Sometimes we say, hey, I like to taste this particular thing. I like this combination of tastes. Western experience of taste tends to be more monotonic. What do I mean when I say monotonic? Means that, okay, I like to have, I'm going to have something that's strawberry flavored, or I'm going to have something that's grape flavored. Okay, that's monotonic. Those are nice tastes. But really, we in Ayurveda and in Ayurvedic cooking, we tend toward complex and multi-layered tastes. So you have some, what we call shadrasa. You've heard this term. Shadrasatmika, meaning when we are using all 6 tastes. But in the manomaya stage, we become different things, and also having complexity of emotions. So you go to see a movie, ask someone who's really experiencing their manomaya existence. Well, I really enjoyed the exchange of the feelings of the heroine who was feeling somewhat dejected, and then she was able to come out of her shell and find herself and express herself in this way. And that's a very manomaya way to, let's say, experience a movie, for example, or a book. Oh yeah, so I like this book by Dostoevsky, and he talked about the character, and he had all these characters who had names in their Russian names translated to different things. It was kind of a pun on the roles that they were playing. And there was this guy with a drinking problem, in Crime and Punishment. These are all things that we get into in the manomaya stage of our existence. Now, what about as we have become adults, and now if we are more focused on the manomaya layer of our existence? We talked about annamaya, the layer of the physical body and our nourishment of the physical body. We talked about pranamaya, the experience of our vitality and awareness of our vitality. Now in manomaya, it's all about feelings and awareness and experiencing things within the mind and our emotions. So when a focus is there, we want to experience varieties of taste. We want to have different experiences. We also become aware, and we are naturally going to want to be more sensitive. We may think about, oh my God, hey, this person is going to think this about me. This is one of the drawbacks of living in the stage of feelings and emotions. Sometimes we worry too much about what other people feel. What are the kind of problems if we are too much focused in this layer, the manomaya layer? Again, we're talking about these layers because they are all a part, all 5 layers. We still have 2 more layers to talk about, but all 5 are a part of our existence. They should be a part of our existence. Are too much in one layer, then we're neglecting the others. So if we are really obsessed with taste, and these layers, as we're going higher, they are more refined. Talking about something that we started experiencing in our childhood. If we become obsessed with just having different tastes and eating different things, it's going to reinforce our bodily connection. It could also degrade into overconsumption. If we are really focused, I want to keep tasting something new, I want to taste something different, it also can lead to tasting things that are just not compatible with our digestion. And if we're always feeling driven to have something that's new and fresh and different, it can also create a stress. Well, I like going out to a restaurant where I spend $200 on a dinner for two. That's going to create stress because then you're going to have to make more money to pay for that, right? Or, I want to taste, wine that costs $50 a bottle. That's going to also put stress on your budget. So it's, the problems as we go higher in these layers of awareness, these layers naturally encompass the layers below them. Does that make sense? So when you are in the manomaya layer, it's hard to not be aware of your bodily existence and your feelings of vitality. If you detach yourself from that, if you spend all your time, my childhood was not terribly healthy because I would spend way more time reading books than I should have spent exercise. I should have gotten outside and done more. I did manage to do a lot because I like to get out and explore, and it was the era before helicopter parenting was invented, plus my parents were fairly permissive, and so I did a lot of getting out and riding my bike and going places. I like to explore. And but I did spend an awful lot of time reading books. So if somebody is too much on the plane of, let's say, they're reading books, or even they're, a young man in South Korea who died because he was playing video for 3 days straight and he didn't drink, and he just ended up, he actually ended up dying because he completely neglected basic bodily needs, because he was living in some online role-playing game. That's kind of a ridiculous extreme of being completely in manomaya with no awareness of vitality. I could let my body go to pieces around me. Now, this is not like, yogis can also do a type of discipline where they are able to focus inwardly, but because this is done through asana and pranayam, there is no unhealthy side effect as it would from artificial stimulation. I hope that makes sense. So anyway, this is the manomaya stage, and what are some of the effects in this? Of course, this presentation is really focused on eating habits as they relate to these different koshas. But this is also the introduction to these 5 layers of awareness. I know you've also heard these concepts before of panchakosha, but this is where we're trying to go into these in a little bit more depth. So let's go on to the next stage. What comes after manomaya? It is vijnanamaya. What is vijnanamaya? This is the level of awareness of intellect. It's intellect which is based on facts, reason, and logic. Now, it is very hard to function in the adult world without extending our existence into vijnanamaya. Because if not, what would we be? We would be, like a child in an adult body. And there are people who live that way. They live in a fantasy world. They live in a dream world, and they don't make a connection of intellectual things. Some examples of intellectual things are, when I have to think about my budget. How much money do I make versus how much do I spend? An example of doing something in the our vijnanamaya awareness would be, hey, I'm going to do this. I have a credit card and I can get and am ignoring my buddhi. My buddhi is really more in the layer of vijnanamaya. Buddhi, my intelligence, is telling me, hey, how are you pay for this? You think that, buying this $3,000 thing is going to be good, but have you figured out how you're going to make payment? That is our layer of intellectual awareness. It's our layer of here are the facts. So live, and only look at how things make us feel, and we don't make intellectual connections, we don't make critical connections, it sometimes results in problems. Now, the eating habits in Vijnanamaya, what are types of things that might be characterized? In Vijnanamaya, one might think about from the perspective of intellect, benefit self, what's going to benefit others, what is the impact of the planet, what's the karmic impact of what I do? These are really considerations of the intelligence, and they are part of the Vijnana layer. Now, normally, if we are in the Vijnanamaya layer, we also are encompassing all layers below Manomaya, Pranamaya, and Annamaya. We normally will encompass all of these. But if we try to keep ourselves in the Vijnanamaya layer and we cut ourselves off from considering these other, what are some of the problems? We could have problems because we make extreme life choices. We may also have difficulties integrating with modern life. And that's not so much a problem, potential issue. For example, is everyone getting the sound okay? Let's see, how is the sound coming now? Can you hear my voice all right? It may be a temporary thing with the server. Okay. So when everyone's having it, it's definitely a server issue because my voice has to go to the server and then it gets bounced back to all of you. So problems in Vijnanamaya stage when we, let's say who's going to be the person who's going to be 100% Vijnanamaya? It's going to be a person who, like maybe someone who has Asperger's syndrome, and people with Asperger's, they can be somewhat abrasive, and they just don't really have an ability to process how things emotionally impact others. And they are obsessed with what they think and their opinions based on fact, and they're going to tell people what they feel the facts are, and they really don't have an ability to process how this might make others feel. So that's an example of being kind of trapped in the Vijnanamaya stage and not having a connection with these other layers. Other things, maybe intellectually I have decided that it's best for me to be vegan. And some people, I think that's actually a pretty reasonable thing. I mean, because I'm myself mostly vegan, except I also have dairy. But, to me, it's a pretty reasonable thing. Some people see it as an extreme life choice. And, oh my God, you mean you can't go out to a place that doesn't have vegetarian or vegan options? That's crazy. Some people have a hard time adjusting to that because, consumption of meat is really very much entrenched in Western culture. It is healthier for humans, and we don't even have to use the V word, vegetarian or vegan, because really plant-based is healthy. This is one message that we really try to get across. It is sound based on Ayurveda history. It is sound based on scientific study. Plant-based is healthy for humans. Okay, but when people, of course we can live 100% plant-based, but the point is that sometimes someone gets absorbed in their life choice and they will, shout at other people for not making their life choice. And that's, of course, what gives the rest of us kind of a bad name. Because sometimes if you say, hey, I'm a vegetarian, people say, oh, you're going to try to convert me or something. It's, just to give an example of where we've made a choice. It is really related to the Vijnanamaya layer of our existence, but sometimes we have trouble sometimes it's trouble because we haven't really learned how to adapt in a mature way, how to present ourselves or not feel that we have to present ourselves. Sometimes it's just a matter of how others view our particular choices. So that's Vijnanamaya. And finally, we come to the fifth layer of awareness, which is Anandamaya. Now, what do we mean by Anandamaya? Anandamaya is the level of awareness of our spiritual connection. When we're talking about spiritual, we're talking about not how we feel, but we're talking about Atma. It's the realization of ultimate bliss. And this is really the goal of the yoga process, is to be able to experience ananda through samadhi, through a complete absorption. We're not talking about sectarian religious ideas. It's sometimes a point of confusion. Sometimes people think, oh, you guys are talking about, you're like religious people or something, and you're talking about your own idea. No, we're talking about the Atma, the self. According to Ayurveda, we exist in the layer of, we are Atma, and it is the Atma residing within the body that permeates through contact with ahankar, manas, and buddhi, through ego, mind, and intellect, and circulates through the pran. This is the scientific basis of what we are talking about in Ayurveda. And when we talk about Anandamaya, we are talking about the things that have a direct impact on the Atma, that transcend bodily connection as well as mental connection. Now, this is an interesting topic, and I don't want to, beat this topic more than it has to be, but it's a difficult thing, because why is politics and religion are considered difficult topics for polite conversation? Because people tend to have very strong feelings and strong reactions, right? And it's also, a lot of it is about how we feel about things. So when people have, when people are part of a religious group, they tend to have feelings, and they tend to also like to be with people who have similar feelings. And if you think about it, I mean, we've all been part of different groups at one point or another, whether it's a church or a yoga ashram or a synagogue or a mosque or whatever, or even if it's just a social group, there is an exchange and a commonality of feelings. That's a social interaction, and it is also a valid thing. It's a valid part of the human experience, and it's an important part of the human experience, but that's not what we're talking about when we talk about Ananda. Ananda are the things that directly connect to the Atma. I don't know if this is entirely making sense, but the idea I'm getting at is, you're typically going to experience some of this. Everybody is attracted to something. And even if someone says, look, I'm an atheist or an agnostic, but I'm attracted to humanitarian work. Why? Because they have a perception of the divine as existing in others. They would not say it that way, but unless they are somebody who just wants to go live in a hut on the top of a mountain and really not believe in anything, they probably have a feeling and a need to connect with humanity, right? And humanism. So when we talk about Anandamaya, it's that thing that we are getting out of things that make us feel a spiritual connection, that make us feel a connection with the greater whole. So what's the focus when we talk about eating in the Anandamaya layer? And Anandamaya really should encompass the other layers, but sometimes it might be isolated. What's the focus on eating in Anandamaya? We may do our cooking, eating, and sharing as an act of sacrifice, love, and connection with the greater spiritual whole. In the process of bhakti yoga, devotional yoga of devotion, it's a very important thing. We do cooking as an act of love and devotion, and even our eating is also an act of loving devotion and sharing. These are acts are done as spiritual acts of spiritually imbued acts. And actually, we suggest when people are, practicing cooking, think about your consciousness when you're cooking. And simply the exercise of thinking about your consciousness when you're cooking, regardless of whether you take up that practice of bhakti, of cooking as an act of devotion, do it as an act of love. And this is giving positive consciousness to what you are cooking. Okay, this is actually related to Anandamaya. What are the problems in Anandamaya? Again, we may have problems fitting in with worldly existence, with the modern workaday world, with relatives, or with people who have a particular idea about spirituality and cannot tolerate anything that does not fit with the letter of what they see as the law. Okay? Now, if you think about, like, let's say someone who's newly adopted a new worldview, a new faith or something, sometimes they may take a fanatic approach and they only want to talk about their new belief, and everyone who doesn't fit in with their belief is, bad, of the devil, whatever, something very negative. And this is a problem. And this is not really Anandamaya. This is simply a matter of our mental imposition on spiritual ideas. So I wanted to accomplish two things with this presentation. I wanted to talk about these 5 layers of existence. Think about the model of going from, infancy and toddlerhood in the Annamaya stage, that anywhere from, from around, preschooler on up, where we start being aware of activity and vitality. Then there's that age starting anywhere between about 3 and 7 on up, where we become aware of imagination and the mind and feelings. And then, the stage of Vijnanamaya, maybe when we start reaching adolescence and teenager years, we start to argue, we adopt different worldviews. We want to find something that's different from our parents so we can argue with our parents. I know none of you probably have done that, but I certainly did. I was a very contrarian and difficult teenager. But, and then finally there's the stage of Anandamaya, where we are trying to realize the blissfulness of our existence. And really, if you think about it, having a rich and multi-layered experience in our existence is more fulfilling. So if you have any questions, this is a good time. I want to take a very short break and give you a chance to catch up on, some of the Annamaya and Pranamaya things, like maybe I'm going to go get myself another glass of water and take a quick bathroom break. So I hope that has been interesting. We're going to take a very short break and then resume with another presentation. So we have a total of, I think, about another hour to go. So short break. And I have resumed recording. So this presentation I'm going to go through more quickly than the previous one. This is an overview of mind. So we had, the previous presentation was very in-depth and in some ways a little hard to follow. I want to talk a little bit about the philosophical perspective on mind for Ayurveda and Ayurvedic counselors. So really, what's the basis in philosophy? The philosophical basis is Sankhya philosophy. We talked about Sankhya, how you have the 3 gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Remember, we talked about how the 3 gunas are to the mind what the 3 doshas are to the body, right? And, it's about 75% of that theory that comes into application when we talk about mind. Sankhya gives us the background to understand the subtle, complex, and comprehensive nature of mind. And really, we have to really go through some examples to make sense of it. So that's what we're doing here. What does the mind do? One of the things that the mind does is it sets the perspective. What is our view? Now, perspective is an important concept. We have the perspective of darshan, for example. Darshan are perspectives on reality. But what the mind does, it can also redefine the limits. It can bend the limits of what we consider acceptable. Our mind can change. Mind also represents the presence of cognition and also the absence of cognition. What do we mean by that? It means that the mind is when we're aware of things and when we are able to ignore things, that comes from the mind. There's a concept called cognitive dissonance. You all have probably heard this in discussions on pop psychology. Cognitive dissonance means when we are able to act in a way that contradicts things that we know, but we are able to selectively ignore that. That is what's meant by mind has both the presence and absence of cognition. We can selectively ignore things. And then knowledge comes about, jnana or knowledge comes about when our senses and intelligence interact with objects of sense perception. So we have different actions. There is sensory and motor perceptions and control, or indriya-abhigraha, and swasya nigraha, self-control, uha, or speculation, vichara, or thinking. Objects of the mind are chintya, things that we think about. Vicharya, things that we discriminate from. So, for example, when we say discrimination is a function, we're talking about very low-level functions of mind. So when we discriminate, when we're able to say, look, this is a black sheep and that's a white sheep. I'm able to discriminate between a black sheep and a white sheep. Wow, excellent, amazing. That is discrimination at a very simple level. And in the very simple black and white world, that's all that it takes. But in reality is not really black and white, is it? Uhya, that which we speculate upon, which we try to understand. And dhyaya, what we set as our aim. And sankalpya, what we take as our decision. These are all objects of the actions of the mind. So where is it located? Again, we covered this, just a little review here. Manas is not the brain. It is said to be located all over the body except for the nails and hair. The seat of control of mind is said to be between the head and the hard palate. So it is sometimes said to be between the head and the roof of the mouth. Sometimes it is said to be in heart. Sometimes it is said to be both. And mind is the seat of all the senses. It's the center of all sense objects. What are some examples that we gave last week? Somebody might taste the fruit called durian and think that, wow, it's amazing. And someone else might say, oh my God, this is awful. I want to gag. Some of the hetus. Now, this is a complex topic. There's an awful lot of material here. I want to go over it in brief. But some of the hetus in Ayurveda, eating habits. So when we talk about hetu is a Sanskrit word meaning cause. It is all about understanding the cause. So Ayurveda is a holistic system of health. And we want to treat problems, we want to treat imbalance by addressing the origin of the problem. We don't want to just treat the symptoms. Okay, I'm having trouble sleeping. Well, okay, let me give you a sleeping pill. It'll help you fall asleep. Why give me a sleeping pill? Why not try to understand what is it that's causing my sleep to be disturbed? What is it that's causing my sleep to not come to me? So these are hetus. Eating habits may be causing problems. Worrying and stress. Sleep patterns, sexual behavior, excessive grief, compulsive behavior, fear, hatred, and illusion. Upasattva, reduction of sattva or weak-mindedness. Blocked manovahasrota, and increased rajas and tamas. These, from the perspective of Ayurveda, these are all potential hetus for things like sleep disorders, food addictions, substance addictions, mada or intoxication. We'll talk about that in a minute. Murcha or fainting, unmada, psychosis, apasmara, epilepsy and seizures. Chittodvega, anxiety, vishada, anguish or depression. Shabdashravana, auditory hallucinations. Tama, withdrawal, going into a depressed state. Atipralepa, excessive contact with material objects. Aswapna or insomnia. Anavastita chitta, being detached and disconnected, when we can't make action with anything. Atripti, unsatisfaction. Tandra, or lethargy, stupor. Atinidra, excessive sleep. Brahma, confusion. There are also 6 enemies, and these are things that are considered to lead to mental and spiritual imbalance. These are kama, or lust, krodha, anger, lobha, greed, moha, illusion or delusion, mada, intoxication, and matsarya, or envy. Why are these considered 6 enemies? Because they tend to lead us into addiction. They tend to lead to other types of behavior that are unhealthy. So, this is a very long list. Some of the things that I think need clarification. Mada. When we talk about mada, intoxication, there can be intoxication through beauty, through having a lot of money. For example, consider somebody, you read in the newspapers or the tabloids about somebody who's a young rock star like Justin Bieber, and then he gets a really fancy car and he wrecks it. Why? Well, because to be that famous and to have, thousands of adolescent girls screaming your name and having your poster on their walls, fine, and you feel lightheaded, you feel dizzy, you lose track of things. This is what we talk about when we say intoxication or mada. Okay. Give me just a second. I'm going to pause the recording here for just 1 second. So these things we look at as hetus, or causes. Some of these are karmic in origin. Means that they are based on things that we've done. Some of these are physical, based on our actions or our physical state of being. But these are all hetus, or possible causes for various types of issues. It's a very long list, and I'm not going to try to explain everything on this slide, but this is just to give you an idea of what the potential range of hetus are for mental issues. Now, there are also 10 types of deeds that cause imbalances, and this is according to Ayurveda. What are some of these things that we can do that cause imbalance, that cause mental imbalance? So doing violence by words or action, this is called himsa. And the opposite of himsa is ahimsa. Ahimsa is to do nonviolence. So it is himsa that causes imbalance, not ahimsa. Steya, stealing, this also causes an imbalance. It creates a stress. Anyata kama, if we are excessively indulging in sex, if we are having excessive sexual indulgence that's outside of boundaries, that can also cause imbalances. Paishunya, harsh speech. Parusha vachana. Paishunya actually means being cruel to others. Parusha vachana specifically means harsh speech. Anrita vachana, speaking lies. This also creates stress. These are things that cause imbalance in ourselves. It creates stress in ourselves. Sambidna alapa, to speak in a way that causes separation between friends and family, to speak in a way that creates divisions. Whatever side you are on current political issues, you have to agree that the level of division that we have between people with different political opinions in America nowadays has reached new heights. And it would be very hard to heal and recover from that in society. And there is a lot of this sambinna alapa. And if people are engaging in speech that causes separation, we need speech that creates unity. Think about, again, getting back to social and political issues, think about someone like Dr. Martin Luther King, and he said, I have a dream that people of all races, of all beliefs, of all colors, they should be able to live together and be together. And this is the type of speech that creates unity. People hear this and they become inspired. Nowadays, we have the opposite of that happening in America. It's a very sad thing, but that creates a lot of stress. This is a hetu of imbalance, sambinna alapa. Vyapada, harmful intention, to do things that are intending to cause harm. Abhidya, envy, and drigviparyaya, to criticize others and to criticize their perspectives and their beliefs. These are 10 types of things that are considered to cause imbalance. Okay. So again, it's a long list, but it does give you an idea. Now, another concept that I wanted to review that we did not really have a chance to discuss previously is what we call the cycle of mind. So where is this described? This is in Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is, an ancient book on yoga philosophy. And there is a cycle, but yoga philosophy, of course, has a lot to do with mind, because everything in yoga practice is about being able to focus the mind onto a single point of undivided attention. So the cycle of mind is the one where the mind gets distracted. And this is what the yogi or yogini is trying to avoid. The first part is contemplation. Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho bijayate. So the first stage, dhyayato vishayan, someone is contemplating sense objects. So for example, I am thinking about something. And when I think about something which can be an object of enjoyment or vishaya, I develop sangha, affinity or attachment to it. Then once I've established an attachment to it, kama. What is kama? Kama is desire. Okay. Now, kama is a very interesting Sanskrit word. Kama means it is desire. It comes from the Sanskrit root kam, to desire something. It also can be taken to mean lust, and it can especially mean sexual desire, because sexual desire is one of the most intense desires that we have as humans. So kama comes, and anger arises when desire is unfulfilled or thwarted. It naturally arises when we have unfulfilled desire. It naturally leads us toward anger. Anger creates a deluded state. When we become angry, we become deluded. Um, we lose track of reality. Delusion causes forgetfulness. When we lose our focus on reality, we forget what is important. And when we forget what's important, then we lose the benefit of our intelligence. I could be the most intelligent person in the world, but if I become angry and I forget what's important and I do something I would regret later, what's the use of all of my intelligence? Tell me that. It amounts to nothing. Have any of us experienced that? I have experienced that many times. I mean, I'm supposed to be a fairly intelligent person, and I've done so many stupid things under the influence of anger. If I was going to make a list, I'd be sitting here until the sun went down. When intelligence is lost, we lose everything. Everything becomes lost when intelligence is lost. Intelligence lost is like, we gave that example of the chariot and the driver and the horses. The horses are the senses. And now if the driver, the intelligence, puts down the reins, the mind, and lets the horses run wherever they want, we crash into a barrier somewhere, and it's a bad ending. So this is what's described in the Gita. So, again, from the perspective of a yoga practitioner, the cycle of mind is something we try to avoid. We try not to be fixed on on objects of sense enjoyment. We try to focus the mind on the things that are important to us. We also use this as a practical thing in our daily life. Children, teenagers, try to keep them focused on their studies and doing things that will benefit them later in life. Don't get involved in things that lead to teenage pregnancy and stuff like that. Or taking drugs. These are things that are very common sense that can lead to many different problems. So the best thing is not to really get started, not to get started in some attachment or addiction. So this is just the basic idea, the cycle of mind. Again, what's the point here? To illustrate how the mind works. And think about this. Now, all of you, think about something where you started to think about something that could be an object of the senses, and you went through these stages. So everyone should be able to come up with an example. Just think about an example now from your own life where you went through this whole cycle. You got started thinking about something, and the more you thought about it, the more you developed attachment. The more you developed attachment, some desire arose. Ultimately, you either, at this stage, we usually say, hey, wait a minute, this has produced a desire. It's not wise to go further down this path. Or maybe we tried to do something and it resulted in us becoming angry. And in anger, you can also look at the other side of the cycle. How many times have we become angry? And in our state of anger, we became deluded. We forgot about what was important. And in forgetting about what was important, we lost the benefit of intelligence and something was destroyed. So think about those two halves of the cycle of mind. And, you don't have to say what it is, but just think about that. Think about how these have happened in your own life. I want you to, you could write something and you can make it allegory, you can change names, you can write about yourself as if you were someone else. Just write something on the forum about how this has happened. Yeah. So there you go. These are examples. Write something like a paragraph or two, to give an example how this has happened. But it's really common sense, isn't it? How this happens, how we progress through stages. There's this one guy, Neil Clark Warren, who wrote an interesting book about relationships. And his theory is that relationships work better when they are designed for harmony and compatibility. And when people get together too quickly just for a quick hookup, you get addicted to the physical sensation, but you haven't first made friends with the other person. And he's a strong advocate of avoiding getting into sexual relationships before a commitment, before a long-term relationship. And his idea is, which I think is actually a very good one, it actually takes some time, like at least a couple of years, to get to know someone and become friends with them and really know them at a deep level and know the things that are important to them and their likes and dislikes, before you get addicted to the physical sensation of intimacy. And of course, with kids and teenagers, if they get into that, it can create all kinds of problems, not the least of which is teenage pregnancy. But you know what I'm talking about. So, you can think about this, write about it, change the names to protect the innocent, whatever you need to do. But, try to give some example, either connected or disconnected, these kind of two halves of the cycle of mind. I would like you all to do that, okay? That'll be kind of a homework assignment. Again, mind and intellect, we talked about this last week. The mind and intellect, we define them separately, but really they operate together as one. They do have different things that they do. Intellect can guide the mind. We can also use the intellect to direct the mind and motivate ourselves to get desired behavior. And we really also want to understand how the mind is a product of our known and unknown history. What's our unknown history? Our unknown history is what happened in previous lives. Our known history are things that happened in this life. Sometimes there are even things that happen in this life that are unknown because we forget about them. We can completely forget about things that happen as a result of severe trauma. And sometimes to get over even physical problems, it's necessary to be able to delve into the subconscious through hypnosis or other techniques. And I'm not talking about quackery. I'm talking about stuff that that psychiatrists and psychologists will do to try to help people overcome trauma. But from the Ayurvedic perspective, we also have our unknown history from previous lives. So that's also a part of it. Again, just a little overview here of things that we covered previously. Now, as a counselor, as an Ayurvedic counselor, what does all this stuff, what does all of it mean? We can understand more about how things have gotten to a certain point when we interview someone, when we ask them questions, and also from seeing them. If you meet someone, sometimes they will not talk directly about something that's creating a big problem. Maybe there's a problem in relationships. Maybe there's a problem dealing with children. Maybe there's a problem in caring for parents. Maybe there's a problem at work. Sometimes it's very hard to talk about the thing that's causing me the biggest problem. And sometimes as a counselor, the best thing you can do is be a skilled listener and be able to understand what someone really wants to say, but they're not able to. We also have many tools that we can use to help someone improve and find balance. What are some of the tools? Meditation, yoga therapy, dietary changes, lifestyle changes, doing pranayama, change of attitude, good sleep, having a nourishing and sattvic diet, brahmacharya, or reducing indulgence in sex, and balancing doshas, especially vata. Why especially vata? Vata disorders are considered to be at the root of many mental imbalances from the perspective of Ayurveda. So if Vata is aggravated, if Vata is really being aggravated, it will tend to cause mental problems. So one of the things that we do is try to make sure that the doshas are balanced, and especially Vata. These are all tools that are helpful for mental issues from the perspective of Ayurveda. You know, again, Ayurveda is a holistic process. So the first thing is, let's understand the hetus, understand the way that the mind works and how you might get into a particular state. Some of the things that we might ask in counseling, you can ask about someone's spiritual life. Do you meditate? Do you believe in charity? Do you go to a church or a temple or a kirtan group or a meeting group or a mosque or synagogue or something? Do you chant? Do you do kirtan? Do you sing? Do you do something? What is it that you do? These are relevant things because they help to balance the mind, even if it is not, people are going to have their own opinion about what's the spiritual value of different practices. But even from the most practical and pragmatic perspective, it is balancing to do these things that give a connection, a sense of connection to greater reality. We can also make suggestions. We can make suggestions about yoga therapy, pranayama, restorative yoga, shavasana, music therapy, doing music, especially classical Indian music that's based on raga and the time of day. This has been shown to bring changes in pulse rate, circulation, blood pressure, metabolism, and respiration. And of course, dietary changes, going to a more sattvic diet, can have a profound change and effect on the mind, on the mental state. It is one of the most fundamental things. What do you eat regularly? The other thing is also about eating for digestion. If someone is, let's say, having a heavy meal just before going to bed, it may affect their ability to sleep. Ayurveda recommends have your main meal of the day midday. Eat more lightly in the evening, because eating a heavy meal at night is going to make it harder for you to sleep well. And that's it. So that is an awful lot to cover. We are very close to being done. I'm going to stop this recording and start a new one, and I'm not going to keep you that much longer.